feel like it's giving even people who are listening, it'll give them the most raw version of a person because
Yeah.
you've seen that and you've experienced that, and not a lot of people get to hear that. So I think that's going to be valuable as long as they're able to get over that discomfort because it's
Hmm.
not common things that people talk about or even hear.
Like I have a theory, right? When you can see the bloopers, like just say you watch a movie and it's a great movie or a great show, and that actor, actress, whatever, they're
Hmm.
here, blah blah, right? But when you see the bloopers, right, it makes them more human. You're like,
Yeah,
man, it took them 32 times to make that shot, like, or shoot that scene or whatever. It's just like
yeah,
it makes you connect more with them because now they're not this hero that's like, you know, like that you can't match,
untouchable.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
they're now this hero that, oh man, that dude made the same mistakes as me, or he found the same thing I found funny, or whatever,
Hmm.
right? So like I rather tell people about my bloopers, not for like a sympathy thing, more just so for empathy, right? Like so you can
Yeah.
understand who I am and then realize that, yeah,
I'm a
I can be
person.
great some days. Yeah, I can be great some days, but bro, I've
Yeah.
had to do a lot of reshoots.
Literal too. A lot of literal ones. I don't know. I hope that wasn't too soon. But
Yeah. Taamir Ransome. Everybody calls me T. I retired from the Army after 21 years of service in April. I am currently a AI solutions architect and a business owner where I develop solutions and solve problems for people who don't know technology as well as me
you.
or probably anybody else, right? Uh, for my military career, I spent 15 years in special operations, where I was a explosive ordnance disposal operator, which means I was bomb squad. So I went in, tried to defuse bombs, IEDs, blah blah. I have done pretty much any and everything that I've wanted to do because I used to always look up to the Dos Equis guy, and so I always wanted to be the most interesting man in the world. So I have a very unique background and past, and continue to just do stuff just because.
Yeah. I was gonna ask, how close are you to becoming the most interested guy in the world?
I think I'm already the most interesting guy in the world. I speak multiple
Okay.
languages. I'm a published author, not like a super successful author, but I still make money off of
It still
the
counts.
7 or 8 books that I have, like enough to like pay for gas every month. That's pretty cool.
Gas is expensive, so yes.
Yeah, like I can fill up my tank off of my books. Let's see. I teach kids STEM once a week. I mentor probably like 20 or 30 kids at any given time. I mentor probably 10 or 15 different adults through different like college degree programs, life stuff in general. Um, I have fought and loved doing 6 out of 7 continents. I am teaching myself how to play the violin now. I play the
You
drum.
are.
Yeah, because it's super hard.
Wow.
Um, I literally live my life like it's a freaking movie. Like when I was
I
younger, I
know.
wanted to be a ninja, and I found a job that allowed me to do that. And like I'm learning the violin because Interview with the Vampire is one of my, or not Interview with the Vampire, it is one of my favorite series of books, but Queen of the Dam is one of my favorite books and movies. And there's one scene where Lestat plays the violin. I want to learn that one scene. So I'm learning how to play the violin so I
Yeah.
can do it. I
Oh,
not to impress anybody else. I just want to impress myself.
yeah. No, I love that attitude. And I'm gonna need the reference of every single show and movie you've mentioned so I can watch it and
Okay.
play this back and understand all the references you just made. I actually wanted to talk a little bit about your transition into the military. I read a post that you had mentioned on LinkedIn. You talked about, well, two different things. In the post, you had mentioned that there was a point where you didn't even know what your life looked like, especially because I'm not sure if this is the reason why you thought that, but I know you dropped out of high school and then joined the military. What did the transition look like, and what made you want to join the military? And I know you also made a statement that you didn't even think you would make it past the age of 18. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
I grew up in Newark, New Jersey, right? We're pretty poor. My mom's a single mom. We she got us out of New Jersey when I was about 10. And then like around 16 or so, 15 or 16, I decided that, I wanted to go back to New Jersey, be close to my dad. I went to New Jersey. I lived with my dad for probably about probably like a good 3 to 4 months.
Hmm.
And like at some point, like, and again, like I think I was like, I can't remember, I was like 15 or 16. And then my dad comes home one day and like he's like, "Hey, the apartment is yours." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "Well, I'm moving in with my girlfriend." I'm like, "Oh, am I coming too?" And he's just like, "Nah, like it's yours though." And so I had to get a job. So that proved to be really cool because that forced me to do like it's always been those things where like I'd be faced with a problem or a problem would come up and I would just
Hmm.
solve it. Like so at 16, I couldn't get a job that paid enough to afford rent and stuff.
Fun. Yeah.
So I like back then it was you just needed a birth certificate, a copy of birth certificate to get an ID card. So I like
Hmm.
I took my birth certificate and like obviously I was born in 83, right? And so what I did was I took my birth certificate and made like 3 or 4 different copies, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I like cut out the one of 1983, and then I like glued that over the three. So now then I made a copy of that, right? And so then I went to the ID card place, right? And I'm pretty sure it's all freaking illegal. But anyway, I ended up getting the New Jersey
Sounds like it.
a legit New Jersey ID card that said I was born in 1981, which put me at like 19 at the time or something. And
Wow.
I got a job working at Bradley's, which was like a prequel to a Walmart or whatever.
Hmm.
They're out of business now, but at first I was just one of the guys who worked on the docks and like pulled all the inventory off the trucks.
Hmm.
So they had like TVs, all this stuff, whatever. And then, but that was like super like strenuous, and I didn't want to do that, right? And so I remember like staring at all the older guys who drove forklifts, right? And so I just like paid attention to what they did, and like would go home and like draw out these little things of like whatever. And I remember going to my boss like after a month, like they needed more forklift drivers, and so he's like, "You know how to drive a forklift?" I didn't know how to drive a car at the time, and I was like, "Yeah," like, and sure enough, man, like first couple of days was real slow, but my little
Yeah.
paper just at my apartment worked out, and like at 16 years old, I was looked at as a 19-year-old and I was getting paid like freaking 20, 30 bucks an hour driving a
Wow.
forklift.
Wow.
And
So all you
so,
had to do was change your birth certificate.
yeah. So, and that's been me my whole life. It's, I want to say, I don't want to say that I BS my way through things, but it's one of those things where it was like, I would lie about certain things that I knew how to do it
Yeah.
and simply go home at night and just perfect that. Where after a week, it was like nobody, people would have thought I like went to this master class. No, no, like no, like I just literally would go home because that was my problem. I'm gonna freaking learn how to do this and do my thing.
Yeah. And I think you touched on a really good thing, and this is something I try to remind myself a lot. Even if you don't know how to do something as of right now, you still have the ability to learn it. And it sounds like that's the mentality you took on throughout your life. Even if you didn't know how to do it, you had the confidence to tell other people that you can. If not, then you can learn it. And you did. So you
Yes,
consistently proved yourself to yourself and to other people. So nothing really felt like it was holding you back.
I think everybody can think that way. I was put in those situations more because of myself, right? Like I could have always went back to Georgia with my mom, right? Like
Hmm.
literally dropped out of school, ran away from home to be close to my
Mm.
father,
Wow.
and I could always had went back. I'm glad I didn't initially. My pride forced you to not go back because I didn't want to be like, "Oh, mom, I need to come back home," right? Because that was been a thing of where like my decision was wrong, and I wanted to say, "Hey, this was the right
Mm.
decision." And even if it's wrong, I'm going to climb out of this hole by myself, right? Like, and so another thing is like everything that I've ever done or wanted to do or had to learn, it always was like life or death for me. Like at 16, I could have went back home. I wasn't smart enough at the time to be like, you know what, let me get the hell out of New Jersey.
Yeah.
Uh, but it was a thing of like I had to work because if I didn't work, I would have been homeless. And if I would
Yeah.
have been homeless, like which I still ended up being homeless for a while anyway, but whatever. Like so and
Would you
but
like
this
to talk a little bit about that?
yeah, so Bradley's get shut down, right? And
Mm.
so I was really didn't have anywhere to go, right? Like I stayed with my aunt for a little bit, I stayed with my grandparents, but I started doing other things, right? I became a neighborhood pharmacist for a little bit. Um,
Yeah.
so, but still, it was just a thing of like, I was always like a good kid, like super smart,
Hmm.
like, but so like that never. that never was enough for me, right? Like I didn't just want to like even doing that stuff. Like I didn't want to be the guy on a corner. Like I wanted to be the guy
Hmm.
in charge, right? Like,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
never like I don't work for anybody. So uh and then like I would crash over my girlfriend's house for a while. And again, even I started staying with my grandparents. My grandparents had their kids, and like it was really horrible. I was probably homeless for like a good 2 months during that time.
Mm.
Like just kind of bouncing around, blah blah. And uh it sucked staying with my grandparents because my uncle was addicted to heroin, and I would have
Mm.
to put all my clothes on because if I didn't, like literally everything I owned, I would sleep with it, and then I would have to
Wow.
like catch all my clothes
Yeah.
in the daytime because my uncle would steal my stuff. Literally like stash my stuff like outside in a waterproof bag, and then I
Hmm.
would bring it on inside like so I can go do whatever I had to do in the daytime. When it got dark, I'll bring everything inside. I'll put all my clothes on and then go to sleep.
Wow.
Then, so during that time, I ended up getting robbed once, right? For the first time.
Hmm.
And it was crazy because I had a girlfriend at the time, and I remember her cousin had to go home, but she lived like way up the street, like probably like a mile away. And so I looked at her and I was like, my mom raised me really well. And I was like, hey, we can't let her walk home by herself. It's dark, right?
Yeah.
And so we literally left her apartment, her mom's apartment, whatever, and we walked around the corner and this guy comes up to us and he's like, do I know you? And I was like, naive. I think I was like 17 at the time. And I was like, I don't know, do you? and like, and the reason why is because my grandparents are really, really good people. Everybody knew who they were, right? They were
Hmm.
always either like they were everybody's grandparents. And so I thought maybe it was like he asking me, like, I don't know,
Yeah.
that's what I thought, right? And then he was like, I said, do I know you? And that's when I seen a gun, right? And so then I
Um,
pushed my girlfriend and her friend aside, and I was like, walk away. Like, and they walked away.
yeah.
And I'm like, nah, I don't know you. And then I like put my hands up and he like ran my pocket, stole my stuff or whatever, and then like walked away or whatever. But it's crazy because I think the reason why he ain't freaking in me that day is because he recognized my girlfriend and her brothers she had two brothers who were like real big in the streets. Like her oldest brother used to be really big in the streets,
Hmm.
but like turned his life around, but still had that respect. And so he walked away. And this dude was like freaking 30 something years old, like robbing a
Wow.
7-year-old kid, like just
Yeah.
it's New Jersey. Like
That sounds like a scary experience, to say the least, and very traumatizing.
I I didn't feel nothing. Don't
I
ask me
just,
why. Like
I
seriously,
won't,
like
I won't ask you.
it is just a thing, right? Like,
Hmm.
and so a couple months go by, I'm still doing what I'm doing, and like now and I'll never forget this day. So I like get rid of all my medication and freaking give my money to all my grandparents. And the only thing I kept was like my one chain and my boots. And like the day prior,
Hmm.
I was like, you know what? I don't like the way my life's going. I'm gonna go back to school or something, and then I'm gonna get a real job, blah blah. So I like went to this there's a store in New Jersey, grocery store called Pathmark. And I remember going up there and taking the test, right? And like
What
I
test?
they used to like have this test for like it's like a math test and like kind of
Hmm.
customer service style test. It was really weird. Super easy though. But like apparently I like this makes me when I look back on it, I'm like, this is sad. But I like scored a perfect and they had never seen that before.
Yeah.
And so they're like, hey, what did you want the job for? I was like, I don't care, cashier. They're like, would you want to be a manager? And I'm like, sure. So I'm like, cool, like my
Yeah.
smart. Make sure I dropped out of school not because it was hard. I was bored.
Yeah.
I'd rather make money. So like I was like, cool. So like I said, I got rid of like divested myself of this old lifestyle and I was gonna change my life around, right? And I remember it was Columbus Day. I'll never forget this. It was snowing, and like I said, I just gave all my money to my grandparents, and I was like, I'm gonna do things different. I'm gonna be a better
Hmm.
person. I'm not gonna let this neighborhood define who I am and not become a statistic, right? And my grandmother was just like getting on me. And she's like, I want a sandwich. And I'm like, Grandma, like it's cold outside.
Yeah.
It's man, like, can we just wait? And like she's like, I'll make you something else. And she's just like, no, I want a sandwich. So I'm like, all right. So I went to we call it the Puerto Rican store, like the bodega, like where they sell, whatever. So I go to the store, I go buy the bread. Like again, it is freezing outside, and there's probably like a foot of snow on the ground, right?
Oh my.
And I'm walking, and I'm like probably I would say I'm a good 50 or so feet from my grandparents' apartment, and I see these guy like out the corner of my eye, and at the time, like I'm thinking, like, all right, I'm talking to the universe, right? And I'm like, all right, we're gonna do this. I'm gonna do this right thing. I'm gonna try to be good to people, blah blah blah. Like, and I
Hmm.
remember feeling really, really good about the decision. And I see this person out the corner of my eye, and the dude was like, "What's up?" And I was like, "What up?" And I thought it was one of my buddies, right? And then he cocks his gun and he goes, "What's up?" And I'm like, "God damn
Not
it!"
again.
Yeah. So I throw my hands up, and it's like he comes up, he puts a gun to my head, and two more dudes come out and they put and like I'm just like thinking, so they're like run my pockets, and I'm like, bro, I don't got no money, and so they snatch
Hmm.
my chain off, and that pissed me off. I'm like, fuck, like crap or whatever. Then they take my boots, right? Because they're brand new boots. I just bought these
Yeah.
boots. Kind of like my reminder of like to not go back to that lifestyle. And so now I'm standing in my socks in the snow, and I'm pissed, right?
Yeah.
And the dude like gets mad, and he like puts the gun close, like jams the pistol like into my forehead,
Hmm.
and I look at him, and I remember like at this point is like all fear of everything just went away, right? Like
Hmm.
everything, like I don't actually like it wasn't a thing of not because I was trying to be hard, like I was like I don't know, and so he looks at me, and I'm like, bro, I don't have nothing else, and he's
Yeah.
like, you got something? I was like, and he was like, you have something, you better give it up, or I'm gonna kill you. And I told him like, excuse me, I know this is a podcast, but I was like, I have shit else. You're gonna fucking kill me. Do it. Like, and I looked
Yeah.
him dead in his eyes and said that. And that I guess that confused him because he gave me the sideways dog look. Like,
Like,
and so
okay.
I guess that threw him off that I wasn't
Mm.
afraid. Like, and so he kicked me and was like, "Go home." And so I ran to the house and like that's when all the emotions came out. Right. Like I cried. Like I
Mm.
was angry. Like I just didn't know. And so like literally, then I went to my girlfriend's house and she's like, "What happened?" I told her what happened. Blah blah. Blah. And she's like, "Why'd you tell him to kill you?" And I was like, "Because I don't care." And I was like, "I don't want to live like this." And so I called my mom like immediately and was like, "Mom, I want to come home."
Yeah.
So I went back to Georgia, and then you would think I learned my lesson. More bad stuff happened.
Was the lesson to not go outside and at night?
No,
That
no.
was not the
Like
lesson.
the lesson was so that was like kind of like for me that was like strike 2.5. That like the dope boy lifestyle is not for me. And so
Hmm.
I moved to Georgia. Everything's cool. I started working at like a hotel, and I was doing good. Bought a car, blah blah. And right around like I would say Thanksgiving, my cousin is talking to me. He's asking me about like how I was living in New Jersey. My cousin was a pretty big street pharmacist in
Yeah.
the Marietta, Cobb County area in Georgia. And I'm telling him stuff. I'm talking about connects, and then he gasses me up. And this is my older cousin, right? I learned a lot of
Hmm.
stuff. Like, and so he's like, "Hey," he's like, "Come here." And so he like opens his closet, shows me all his money, probably like close to
Mm.
like a couple $1 million, right? And he's like, I'm about to move out to a different city. Do you want to run this house? And I thought about it, and I was like, man, no, I want to do good. I want to do something. And then I thought, I was like, but I could run a whole house. Like, and I was
It's
like,
a lot of
sure.
money.
Yeah. So I'm 17 at the time. And so I remember this, like, he's supposed to come pick me up New Year's Eve. And that was going to be like our celebration, our start of this enterprise that we're talking about building. And New Year's Eve comes by, no call, no show. And
Mm.
I was at his mom's house, my aunt's house, and New Year's Day comes by, no call, no show, and it's starting to get really weird. So, my aunt's like, "Hey, let's, we're gonna go to his house, right?" And so, we go to his house, and my aunt's like, "Hey, go in the window, no matter what, freaking, uh, come straight to the door, open the door,
Hmm.
go inside." House smells horrible. I've never had smelled the smell like ever in my life, right? And she's like, "Don't go anywhere. Just come in the front door." Well, what they think happened is that either New Year's Eve or something, somebody that he knew, because there's no forced entry, no nothing. Like I said, the house was locked up like
Hmm.
normal, nothing broken. Somebody came to visit him. They shot his brother that was wrapped up in the blanket on the couch, and then he was trying to get to his guns in the closet, and they shot him like
Yeah.
he was looking up whatever. He got shot twice in the chest, and then took all the money. Again, we think of somebody he know. Like to this day, we think it was a certain person, but like that was my final wake up call. And the crazy
Mm.
thing was that like he had to get cremated because it was wintertime, and so they had got shot like anywhere between uh January 30th and like the 2nd.
Hmm.
and the heat in the house was on like 80 degrees because of the cold. So you imagine them being
Yeah.
in the house at 80 degrees dead, so and that was like my final call. Like at that point, I was just like all my ambitions of being this kingpin enterprise type dude went away. And I was like, all right, that's the universe finally telling me like, bro, you need, because I was supposed to have been there. Right. Like,
Yeah.
so the final, like my final thing of like, you know what? I'm going to follow my original plan. So I literally picked up a book from Barnes and Nobles on GED, studied the GED test for a month. Like I studied that
Yeah.
book for a month, took my GED. Like I think today I still hold records for like highest math scores and science scores and writing scores in Georgia. Um, wanted to join the Coast Guard, right? And
I'm not laughing.
but yeah, well, the Coast Guard recruiter was 19 miles away, and I didn't feel like driving that far because I was
Yeah,
lazy.
that's far.
And so
It's
I ended
far.
up going, yeah, I ended up going to the mall, and I was like, screw it, I'm gonna join the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps was like, we don't take GEDs. And so
Really?
at the time, yeah, this is 2001. So this
Okay.
was May 2001. And it's funny, as soon as they said that, like I was like, I felt almost defeated. And like literally the army recruiter, like, because they used to be like each service was like right next to each other in the mall, like
Yeah.
so the mall. And so I'm walking out the Marine Corps office and the army recruiter literally pops his head out and he's like, we take anything.
We take
So
anything.
like,
That's
which is
funny.
cool. And my recruiter was really dope, man, because he was like, hey, why you have a GED? And I explained to him, I was like, it's not because I'm stupid or anything. I was like, I showed him my scores. And he's like, holy crap, man, you score really well.
Hmm.
And I was like, yeah, dude. I was like, I get bored easy, right? Like, pretty sure it's ADHD. Back then, nobody was calling it that, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I signed up for the late entry program in June, which is the late entry program is you sign up at one point and then you have a couple months to do whatever.
Hmm.
So basically, they were like, hey, because you have your GED, we already met our quota for the year, but you can sign up now. And then I was like one of the first people
For
for
next year.
the next fiscal year, so October. All right, and so I was like, all right, cool. I wasn't like super defeated. I started working construction jobs with my
Hmm.
stepdad, and which was cool because like that was getting me into pretty good shape because I was hanging sheetrock and helping out, like learning how to do masonry work. And we were downtown Atlanta. 9/11 happened. I remember my recruiter called me, and like we're watching the news at work on one of the construction sites. And my recruiter called me. He's like, "Hey, you watching the news?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "You still want to join?" Because the delayed entry program, like it really don't like it's a thing, but it really doesn't count until you swear in the second time.
Mm.
So I was like, "You think we going to war?" And he was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Well, shit, yeah, I've never did war before. Like that sounds cool." And the
That
rest of
sounds cool.
it, like,
That sounds like my cup of tea. I will join.
yeah. Apparently, like a bunch of people that he had signed up was like, "Nope." And
No, I'm good.
I was
Yeah.
like one of the few like, "We going to war, dude?" And he's like, "I think so." And I was like, "Well, yeah, I want to go."
Let's go try it out. Wow. I'm so taken back because I feel like even though we've spoken many, many times, there were still parts that I didn't know. So I learned today. And just putting everything together makes a lot more sense that when I asked you, T, what are you afraid of? Your first answer was, oh, I used to be afraid of heights, not anymore. And that's it. And I asked you nothing else. You're like, no. And that still surprises me, but I feel like it's starting to make a little bit more sense because you most of the things that we're afraid of, the normal population, I'm gonna
Mm,
call normal who haven't seen a lot of shit, but we feel like we have. And it it's very irrational fears that just keeps on holding us back. And it doesn't sound like you let even rational fears get in your way.
no, man, I'll thank my mother for that. Like
Yeah.
my mom for what she liked, and I would say financial stability.
Hmm.
She overcompensated in love and just support and like
Yeah.
legitimately, like my mom always like it's crazy when you hear this all the time. Like everybody's parents are like, oh, you can be whatever you want. Like, dude, like, nah, like my mom, man, she was legit. Like any idea I had, like anything
Hmm.
I wanted to do, like even if she couldn't afford it, she would never stop me. Like I always had to
Mm.
figure out how to do it myself, right? Like when
Yeah.
I wanted to play football, like growing up and when I was going to high school, right? My mom was like, go for it, dude. Like I can't do anything for you, but I support you. Like do your best, right? And even
Yeah.
my grandmother, same thing. Like my grandmother like always like preached like, man, don't be afraid of anything. Like, and not only that, it was a thing of where I grew up with you have no reason to fear anything, right? And then whatever you decide to do, like, and my grandma literally would say this. She's like, I don't care if you're a shit shoveler, right? Be the best goddamn shit shoveler in the world, right? And so that's my attitude. Like, so I grew up with this mentality of I'm not afraid to try anything. I'm not afraid to do anything. And whatever I'm gonna do, I'm gonna do my best to be the best at it.
Hmm. And
So
yeah, cannot agree more. And I see that in you too, day in and day out.
appreciate it.
So, but in terms of being in the military, how do you feel like just because you spent like 20 years,
21.
right?
Mhm.
21 years in the military, and how do you feel like that shaped or did it shape your view on life and just the world that we live in?
Yeah, so it did. Um, it was like a pendulum swinging, right? And
Mm,
so before I joined the military, right? Like I said, I went back home with my mom at 17, 18 years old and waiting to go to the military. And uh like my mom, like we grew up at like Baptist, right? Like and we went to church like freaking every day of the week. Like and the first change I would say was prior to the military of like where my mind frame started to change when it came to like religion, right?
mm,
And so I saw a lot of things and I we talked about this before, right? I started
yeah.
questioning stuff, right? Like and I won't name the church or whoever, but like one of the things I've seen, because this is quite common, is that like there's this church and people go to this church and the pastor and his family, multiple houses, nice cars, but the congregation doesn't know where their next meal is coming from. But they're still, no matter what, every Sunday they're pulling out their wallets, their purses, and
Mm,
they're putting money in the collection plate, right? And so I started to question like, where's the money going to? Is one, right?
hmm
And two, how is that shaped how like I wanted to lead, right? And how I always wanted to be a leader because I'm not, like I'm the oldest grandkid. Like we always had a crew, blah,
hmm
blah. But that started to shape like me in the sense of I knew what type of leader I didn't want to be. I didn't
mm,
want to be a leader that had access and my people had nothing. And that's what
mm,
I saw in a lot of churches, right? So that's one. Then I joined the army, and it's funny, right? Because again, I ran with a pretty rough crowd growing up, right? And I remember my best friend in basic training. In any other sense, this is why I love the military, right? Like in any other sense of the word, me and this guy probably would kill each other had we met each other outside the military. I was this freaking thug, whatever. He's a working class like skinhead from Boston, like, and because of the military, we had to stop and talk to each other, right? We had to be
yeah.
friends. And then we started realizing that we had a lot of similar views. Like he had some crazy views, right? But my point is that what he thought about, black and brown people and blah blah was just something that he was taught, right? And something that was learned. And he realized like all that stuff is stupid, right? And then
Hmm.
there's certain things that I thought about and that I learned from him. And then I started asking him questions. So again, like there was no reason for us to fight, right? If we would have
Mm,
fought, we'd have got in trouble. So it was like, you know what? We were forced to sit down and like have these conversations. Like, why do you have these views? And he started saying certain things, and I'm like, he's like, I want to work and pay taxes, and I'm like, well, shit, me too. It's like I don't think anyone racist is responsible for you doing that. And he thought about it. He's like, but that makes a lot of sense, right? And there's certain things like I want to take care of my family. I'm like, yeah, me too.
Me
But
too.
and then I would say stuff like, I just want to have fair treatment and make sure that, if as long as I qualify for, a position or a job like that, I have the opportunity not to be given the job or at least to try out. And he was like, well, shit, me too. So like we became really, really good friends. Like this guy's a
Hmm.
friend of mine to this day. But like I
Yeah.
said, any other scenario, any other place where we like it was kind of one of those things where like you always hear the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yeah.
That's what it was. Our enemy was a drill sergeant, right? Like, and so we became friends because we didn't want to get smoked and we helped each other out. And that's like the second phase of my evolution that
Yeah.
everybody has a story, everybody has their own things they're going through.
Hmm.
And it made me realize really quick because like basic training, the cool thing, like what happens in the military, and this goes for any service, like you get you get America in its like most rawest form,
Mm,
right? So you get Indian people, black people, Hispanic people that like And sometimes you get people that like a lot of times actually you get people where they never grew up around these people and had this misconception,
Mm,
right? But then you get forced to work with these people for a greater good or a common goal. It doesn't matter what it is. Like in base training, you do all these like team events, blah blah blah,
yeah,
and you realize like the guy, because he's the same skin color as you, is just as lazy as anybody else. And then the other guy who you thought you would have hated is like,
yeah,
it's clutch, right? In
yeah,
any situation. So you start to not see color, right? Like
yeah.
you start to judge people based off of their merits and their what they put forth, like to help the whole.
Hmm. And at that
So
point, you're focused on the bigger picture, not just what
yeah,
you
you
look
focus
like or
on
what
the
someone
mission.
else looks like. Yeah,
Yeah, like you focus on the
yeah.
mission. And that's happened throughout my military career, right? Like even as I started to deploy, right? I
Mm,
would, you know, you get trained and you dehumanize. Like it happens every war, right? The reason behind that is because taking life, right, is probably like the greatest sin, right? Like because we're
yeah,
put on earth, right? Whatever you believe, we know we're put on earth to make life, right? Like
yeah,
so taking life is probably if making life is the greatest joy, taking life is the greatest sin, right?
yeah,
So to dehumanize the enemy to allow 18-year-old kids to be able to pull a trigger because it's something they've most of us never done, right? Like
yeah,
so but then you start meeting these people, and I started traveling around the world, and I've met Iraqis and befriended Iraqis, and realized it's the same exact thing everywhere I went.
hmm,
People just want to live their lives, be left alone, and be safe.
yeah,
Like, doesn't matter where you're at. Even in Iraq, like you meet certain people, and they're like, you start talking to them, and you're like, "What's up with you?" And they're like, "I just want to take care of my family." And like literally, that's the common phrase. You're like, I want that person says I want to do X, and you literally like, shit, me too. Like you realize how like truly connected we really are, like outside of all the other crap
differences.
that's out there. Yeah,
Yeah,
because I end up being bomb squad, right? Like, and I had to defuse a lot of explosive, improvised explosive devices, IEDs. I've been blown up tons of times, right? I've watched guys blow themselves up, right? And so I'm like, all right, you know what? I started getting confused again. This goes back to me questioning everything. I'm like, what about Islam? What's in the
hmm,
Quran that makes people want to blow themselves up? Guess what I found? Nothing. Seriously, like the Quran does preach and teach help your fellow man, selflessness. Same thing as the
hmm,
Bible, same thing as the Torah, same thing as every other thing out there, right? Be good to people. Like, and there's nothing in there about blowing yourself up. Just like there's nothing in the Bible about burning witches, right? So it's just like, so that put me on a path and a quest of like legit people are just people, man. They're just trying to live.
yeah,
And there's always a group of not so smart mofos who jack that up for everybody, and they have their
yeah.
own agenda for whatever reason.
I
So
was gonna say, I think we have that even without the religion.
yeah,
Yeah,
I think religion is just the biggest way to not.
weaponized
I mean,
basically.
yeah, religion is the biggest way to weaponize ideas, and the
Mm,
Christian is like you can kill whatever you want to kill. You can't kill an idea.
yeah.
I he has a theory that if a person who retires and gets out the military doesn't have a good transition,
Hmm,
then leads to really high rates of suicide, veteran suicide. And
hmm,
so, and I've seen it before, like where guys have gotten out, blah, blah, and it's horrible, right? And I'll admit like that. Had James had not called me and I not started going and talking about him, talking to him and doing those like Friday morning coffees, I couldn't tell you where I'd be today, right?